If you don't mind starting the recording. Great. Well, thank you all, those in attendance, and welcome to the City of Tucson and Pima County Home Consortium's Home Rental Housing Request for Proposal, or RFP Pre-Proposal Conference or webinar. We will, next slide, please, Kat. This is our home affordable housing gap funding finance team here at the city. I'm Andrew Paredes. I'm the Community Development Administrator. Alexa Johnson, our Community Development Manager, is on the call. And you all may or may not also know Mary Leone, our Rockstar Project Coordinator, who deals with a lot of these development projects on a day-to-day basis. We also have today, luckily, Kat Polston, who's helping us out on the back end with our slides and our technical expertise. If you would, please, if you're in attendance, please type your name and organization in the chat so that we can keep a record of everybody who attended today. And if you're having any technical difficulties, please first try to log in and log out and log back in. And we do ask that you remain muted during the presentation. We will hold plenty of time after the presentation for question and answers. Feel free as we're going along and a question comes to your mind to throw it in the chat so that we can remember to circle back to it. I think first we'd like to ask real quick if there are any members of the press or media in attendance. If there are, if you would please identify yourselves, we'd appreciate that. Looks like we have Vivian Lovato in attendance from, oh no, sorry, I thought that was a press notification. All right, next slide, please, Kat. So our plan today is to go over the recently published and posted RFP for home affordable housing development funding through the city. So I want to be sure that that we all understand this request for proposals and funding opportunity is specifically for the development or preservation of affordable housing projects. If you are in the audience and looking for information about individual level housing assistance, rental or homeownership housing assistance, that is not what this webinar will cover, though we do have plenty of information for you at the city's website that we will put in the chat. But again, this webinar will cover affordable housing development financing assistance and not individual-based assistance. Okay, so an overview of our home funding available this round. We have approximately $2 million of home gap funds available, of which $467,000 is set aside for certified community housing development organizations, or what we refer to as CHDOs. Traditionally, these offerings have been sought after by applicants for low-income housing tax credits. Those that are applying for the 9% LIHTC allocations are eligible to receive up to $500,000 through this RFP. Those that are applying for 4% LIHTC allocations or non-LIHTC allocations are eligible to apply for up to $1 million through this RFP. Next slide, thank you. The RFP was posted last week on November 25th. If you all didn't get it, you can find it at the city's and HCD's PCHIP call for projects page. This RFP is available to projects seeking funding for acquisition and rehab of existing rental housing, new construction of rental housing, refinance of debt when used to rehabilitate a property. And the use of home program funds must result in the creation of new home eligible low-income housing units. Important to note here that funding is available not only for projects located in the city of Tucson, but also for projects located in Pima County. as our home funding is a collaboration or a consortium between both the city of Tucson as well as Pima County. So projects not in the city, but in Pima County, say they were in Marana or Oro Valley or Sahuarita or unincorporated Pima County would be eligible. Housing types that are eligible are site-built, single unit or multifamily, so kind of your traditional apartment building construction or rehab, group homes, manufactured housing, and single room occupancy units are all eligible property types under the home program. All projects must begin work within 12 months of an executed contract, and construction timelines or completion must be within 2 years of an executed contract. Acquisition of property or real estate is an eligible cost or use of this funding, along with development, hard construction costs, as well as related soft costs. Relocation costs are also an eligible cost under this program if an applicant was planning to acquire an already occupied building, relocate the tenants, fix it up and rehab, and then kind of repopulate the building. Those are also eligible. This funding is targeted towards families or residents, low-income families or residents. All units must be occupied by occupants at or below 80% of area median income, and 90% of the project households must be at or below 60% of the area median income. It does allow for income averaging that's acceptable under the LIHTC program, can also fit under our home gap funding program. For the very large projects with 5 or more home assisted units, that translates into projects of 100 or more actual units. At least 20% of those units must be occupied by households earning less than 50% of the area median income. These awards will be made in the form of cash flow contingent loans with an interest rate of 2%. That cash flow contingent, that means that there are annual payments once the project is placed into service of the greater of $1,000 or 50% of surplus cash flow. So, the intent there is to set the loans up to expect regular payments. Kind of a nominal $1,000 payment a year will be generally expected within the first, 5, 7, 10 years of a project's life. Once the project has paid back all of its deferred fees and begins to have surplus cash flow over and above, first mortgage or primary mortgage debt service, then 50% of that surplus cash flow will be expected to be paid to repay this debt. Generally speaking, that's in the out years of these projects, and sometimes never in very low income projects, but that is the expectation and the term of our loans. These loans are primarily used for and expected to be used as gap funding. That means that the last little bit of financing needed to get a project over the hump to kind of complete its sources and uses stack. This is generally not a good use for primary project funding. Our application process this year will very much be like last year. We will be using the Neighborly application portal. So applicants will be asked to register as an applicant in the city's Neighborly portal. You can see the web address there. And then fill out the application screens and upload all required application material directly into the Neighborly portal. So it's important to note that paper or emailed applications will no longer be accepted. All applications will be due January 9th, and they will be screened to make sure that they meet the minimum threshold. Those requirements are embedded in both the RFP and in Neighborly. If applications are deemed not to meet threshold on their initial upload, applicants will be contacted and given an opportunity to cure or update those applications in order to meet threshold. All applications will be reviewed by a city county scoring committee. Applications will be evaluated based on the scoring criteria listed in the RFP and the materials and information that each applicant puts into their neighborly application, as well as supporting documents that have been uploaded. Also important to note that part of the scoring criteria will be a presentation to the city's Commission on Equitable Housing Development in February. So the commission will be part of the scoring rubric, and applicants will be given further information after they submit their application on how, when, and what to expect for that presentation to the commission. This is our application timeline. You all have seen the RFP release. This is our pre-proposal conference or webinar. As I said, applications are due on the 9th. They will be initially reviewed to make sure they meet minimum threshold. Applicants will be contacted by January 14th and notified that they either meet threshold or given a list of items that they need to upload in order to meet threshold. And the cure or threshold, additional information deadline will be January 21st. Award announcements will be made in early March, or award recommendation announcements made late February or early March, with final award announcements made by mayor and council at the second March meeting, so that we're able to get award letters out to all applicants prior to April 1st. Now it's time for questions and follow-up. So I see that there may be some questions in the chat. I will do my best to scroll up and look at any questions. The first question I see is from David Wool about the $1,000 required payments. Yes, that is something new that we started with last year's RFP. So yes, there will be a nominal payment requirement once a project is placed in service, even if it hasn't yet achieved positive surplus cash flow. So if it's in its deferred developer repayment, the project itself will be sent a bill for $1,000. That's, we feel, is going to help both the city's accounting as well as the applicant kind of getting set up and used to receiving a bill from the city each year. Once in general, David, once the deferred fee has been repaid, that's when we would expect that projects really begin to achieve cash flow, and when that 50% of cash flow may be in the $5, $10 or greater $1,000 range, and really begin to take a bite out of accrued interest and principal at that point. Looks like David put a follow-up question. Is this RFP also used for project-based vouchers? Prior conversations with department leadership, we would be told that they would be selected through this process. So yes, this will be shared with our project-based voucher team, and they will use these applications for PBV scoring and awarding. I don't have more information on that as my committee is not part of that, but certainly the intent is they will have access to these applications. Looking for any more questions if they are out there. Feel free to raise your hand if you have that capability in this Zoom webinar, or to type them in the chat. I will also note, for those of you who saw the okay, looks like Dustin is typing a question, and that is just fine. Give you some time. For those of you that saw, this year we released 2 RFPs kind of side by side. So this one is for kind of the more traditional bread and butter rental housing development kind of goes hand in hand with LIHTC in many cases. We also have an RFP specifically aimed at community housing development organizations, or CHDOs, for the creation of homeownership housing projects. So that one will be at 2 o'clock today. That will be specific to CHDOs, specific to homeownership development. I want to be clear that CHDOs also have the opportunity to apply for rental housing development through this RFP. So it could be that, Anytown USA CHDO puts in an application both for a rental project as well as a homeownership project, and that would be acceptable under these offerings. So Marianne asked about David's question related to project-based vouchers. Marianne, our home gap funding RFP scoring panel will not be reviewing applications for project-based voucher awards. However, the applications submitted through this RFP will be shared with our Housing Choice Voucher team, who is reviewing and will be making project-based voucher awards. I don't want to speak, or can't, because I don't know, speak to their process, but we will note this question and post it in the FAQ follow-up on Monday. And Dustin, you certainly, are free to unmute and ask the question verbally if that's easier for you than typing, if we can. I don't know if we have the webinar capability to do that.
Did the unmute work?
It sure did.
Hey, great. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's a really long question, and
Fair
so
enough.
perhaps just talking would be better. Um, we own a fairly generous portion of land right at the base of A Mountain in Barrio Kroger Lane, and next year we were planning on annexing a portion of it using the block plat process in order to put up a duplex. We're excited about the new codification of middle housing options here in town. Um, we were planning on just doing this ourselves. We're not really professional developers, but we're ardent builders and we're good at getting permits and getting things done. If we got additional financial support, we could probably build a second duplex on that split and still be within our geographic boundaries. Because we're not professional developers, are we even eligible to put in an application for this project?
So you'll certainly want to read the RFP and the scoring rubric. The product you describe, a duplex for rent, would be eligible under this RFP. It's important to note that a 20-year low-income rental use covenant is required under this RFP. So a trade-off would be, to kind of keep rents at or below certain thresholds that might or might not make the project pencil. That's what these funds are intended to do, is to help reduce the cost so that low income rents would indeed pencil. The trade-off for that is a guarantee of low income rents for 20 years going forward. There are a number of federally required environmental reviews and labor reporting requirements that go along with these funds, as well as other federally required tenant selection plans, non-discrimination, a whole bunch of things that come with these particular HUD funds. But what you're describing would indeed be eligible. And we as staff are happy to answer questions that you might have with regard to the federal rules and regs.
Yeah, th thank you for clarifying. I wonder if I could set up a follow-up phone call or maybe even meeting with someone before we put down a bunch of time during the holiday season to put out this application. Because if we're not like great candidates, I'd rather just hang out with the kids. But if we could build a second duplex with financial
Yep.
support, that'd be kind of
So what
exciting. Who
it,
could
it
I follow up with?
well, in the interest of transparency and fairness under this RFP process, I think it's best if you were to send your, even if it's a detailed list of questions to the HCD grants email inbox. We can then answer those questions bullet point by bullet point and then post the Q&A on our FAQ page.
Okay, I can do that. Thank you so much for your
Right?
time.
No problem. Looks like we have So David Wool asked a threshold requirement question about an appropriate market demand study which demonstrates sufficient demand to support the project, and asked, can this be market data that will eventually go into a low-income housing tax credit application? Um, so we yes, we need a market demand study and analysis as part of this application that you will be submitting on January 9th. What you submit to us can certainly go into a LIHTC application that would be due on April 1st, but we need to have some sort of market demand study that we can analyze the location and project to see that there is sufficient demand for it as part of this application. So you could not say TBD and we'll submit sometime in March. It does need to be submitted, with the application in January. The question is, does it need to be a third-party professional study, or can it be information that the developer submits themselves? I guess we will ultimately be the judge of that. So you can certainly submit study you've done yourself or that you've had others assist you with. It may or may not be robust enough to demonstrate demand, and that will be kind of compared with the applicant pool. So there is not a requirement, I don't think, and I'll correct myself afterwards, that it be a third party study. But certainly we will want to see a well thought out, reasoned and objective study of market demand. And Alejandro asked, how old can the study be? We will answer that. So we're going to follow up with this with some written Q&A and post it on our FAQ page. If not this Monday, because it is now only half a workday away, definitely by next Monday. And David, the intent is that we are not pivoting away from the types of market demand studies we've accepted in the past. I just want to, formally answer the question in writing so that we can make sure that we've dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's on the answer for everybody's sake. Reed Butler has asked about project-based vouchers. A recording of the webinar will be available. Reed, I see that you joined late, so you can catch up. But in short, this RFP is not specifically to allocate project-based vouchers. Our screening panel will be reviewing applications for gap funding, but the applications will be shared with our housing choice voucher team, who will be making project-based voucher decisions. So the application material may be shared, but our screening panel team for this particular RFP will simply be reviewing for gap funding. Looking for more questions? Otherwise, we will sign off for the afternoon. Well, folks, thank you very much. We will. I'll stay on and keep the line open for another 3.5 minutes. But you certainly feel free to sign off and enjoy your weekend. Thank you all. Team, let's just keep the recording going for another couple minutes just in case. All right, I think we can stop the recording.